something so improbable, the impossible has happened.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow! In your life have you seen anything like that?
Hey DJ, what's going on? I'm Chandler, and this is Tiger Beat Sports. Welcome to a special edition of this all-crazy sports newscast.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler with Sports, and this is the Sport Report.
Chandler with Sports is how he wants to go. With is his middle name, Sports his last name.
At the Sport Report, we pride ourselves on
neutral,
down the middle coverage
with an analytical spin.
We remove the bias so you can think about a team without any outside opinion.
No crazy points for attention.
No power rankings. No opinions.
Just sports.
We're going to throw out the bias and throw in some facts. We're out to change the game. So without further ado,
here we go. Hit it, Blaze.
This is the Sport Report.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler with Sports, and this is the Sport Report. This week, the NFL had their conference championships. X Games were in Aspen, where we had the privilege to be on site. We've also got some news from college basketball, where there's a shakeup in the standings. The NBA has a lot going on, and hockey's headed to an all-star break. We've also got some updates from NASCAR, and Scott Rowland was elected to Cooperstown, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. So we'll start this week with Around the NFL.
Yellow! Oh, Leon left! Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. How in the world? Oh, my goodness.
Around the NFL.
Before we get to Around the NFL, some late breaking news. It's the reason the podcast is a little bit delayed this week. Tom Brady has officially called it a career after 23 seasons, and this time he's not messing around. 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time league MVP, 89,214 regular season passing yards, 649 regular season touchdowns, 13,400 playoff passing yards, and 88 playoff passing touchdowns. Every single one of those things is first in NFL history. So congrats to Tom Brady on his illustrious career. We wish him nothing but the best in retirement. Well, officially we're back. We've been gone. You and I have been gone for 3 weeks together. 2 great conference championship games on tap. Minus the fact that Brock Purdy tore his UCL, pitcher's injury. It's great. And the fact that Christian McCaffrey felt like he was back in high school, being so utilized in so many different areas. The Niners just couldn't find a way to survive or thrive or really do anything. They accounted for 164 yards of total offense. And the Eagles are going to their first Super Bowl in 5 years. And they have a chance to win their first Super Bowl in 5 years, their second in history.
Yeah. 3rd Super Bowl in 20 years.
For
the Eagles.
Is it 2000? That's right. They went in 04.
Yeah, 2004 versus the Patriots. Then the Patriots again in, what was it?
17.
And then this year against the Chiefs.
Ooh, that was... The last 2 were fun.
Oh, yeah, last 2 were close games.
This one's going to be a barn burner.
A barn burner with the Chiefs and the Eagles?
A barn burner in Phoenix.
That'll be... That's one word to describe it. I guess to elaborate a little bit on the game, yes, the Niners only scored 7 points to the Eagles 31. And the drive that they did score 7 points was all McCaffrey. It was a fantastic drive to watch. He took chunks of yards pretty much every single play, and it was fantastic to watch. And other than that, there really wasn't anything to watch if you were a Niners fan. If you showed them that one drive of the game, you would have thought the Niners would have put up much more of a fight. But unfortunately, losing your quarterbacks, both of them, your 4th string, being down to your 4th string, then him getting hurt, there's just not much you can do. No team can survive that.
No, and Purdy played super duper well prior to the game. There's just not much you can do when you tear a ligament that you need to throw the ball, and you can't rely on McCaffrey to perform at a high level and act as if he's playing 5 different positions in the same game. Now, Christian, when he was in high school, he found a way to play multiple positions in a game. I mean, he even attempted a pass yesterday. And that goes back to his playbook that he had when he was younger. So, he comes from a family of quarterbacks and receivers, and Christian's the running back. So he's available in any position on the field.
Yeah, we gave some love to the Niners. Let's talk about the Eagles a little bit. As bad as the Niners were due to their lack of a quarterback, the Eagles were just fantastic, putting up 31 points on the best defense in the league. This was especially a lot of people considered the Eagles to be somewhat lucky, considering they had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. Though they easily won their division, which surprisingly was the best this year in the NFL, and grounded and pounded the 49ers. Yeah. Jalen Hurts looked amazing. He looked fantastic, healthier, and 2 more weeks of rest before the Super Bowl is only going to help him.
Well, and I got to take on that tough defensive line of the Chiefs. Speaking of the Chiefs, 23-20 winners at Arrowhead at home against the Bengals, who beat them in the AFC title game in their home stadium last year. So a little bit of sweet revenge, considering the Bengals had won the last 2 games, counting this year's regular season game at Arrowhead. So Kansas City's headed to the Super Bowl. And, Mahomes is injured. Got a high ankle sprain, but he's playing through it.
Yeah. Way to stay safe, Dragon.
Hey, credit to Tyler Corbo, our action sports correspondent, for making sure that we all got home safe.
Yes. I will say, during the game, you could see that Mahomes was trying to avoid putting his full weight on it most of the game. When he ran, it was clear it was bothering him. He would hobble back to the huddle sometimes. It was evident that they were doing it, but it was unbelievable to see how the Chiefs were able to pull this off. And this game is surrounded with a ton of controversy at the end of the game. Some missed calls on the punt return for the Chiefs when the Bengals punted to them, giving the Chiefs the ball for their winning possession, where they took the field goal. On the play where Mahomes was knocked out of bounds, there was also what Bengals fans claim to be a hold, and if you go back and watch it, I think I agree with them.
By the letter of the law, it would be considered a hold.
By the letter of the law, it would be considered a hold. So this game is littered with controversy, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs won 23-20, and on to the Super Bowl they go, and the Bengals get sent home.
Interesting that you mentioned the referee controversies, because the NFL, and not that you need to share an opinion on this, is more just a thought in space, I guess. The NFL puts together what's called an all-star crew. They take the best referees in the playoffs from their respective positions on the field, I guess you could say. Rear judge, back judge, whatever you want to call it. Head referee. Every single position, they take the best and put everybody together rather than keeping the same crew. So there's no continuity. There's no, hey, usually we would let that slide, or usually we would let this slide, whatever. There's none of that. They try to have a perfect game. And as we've seen multiple times throughout the playoffs, it creates a lot of controversy, 1. But 2, it also creates a lot of errors because referee team members don't know how to communicate with each other because they haven't worked with each other all season. They don't know what's going to be called on one crew is probably not going to be called on another crew, and same for the other crew. I mean, there's 20 different crews in the NFL in a given season. So maybe the NFL needs to revisit that. For now, it goes down in the folklore as Mahomes ran to the sideline, got hit out of bounds by Joseph Asai, the second-year player for the Bengals on defense. Mahomes got knocked out of bounds, 15 yards added on, made it a 45-yard field goal instead of a 60-yard field goal with 8 seconds to go. There are Bills fans probably listening to this going, we remember a time from not too long ago when there was 13 seconds on the clock and Mahomes went down and found a way to kick a field goal. So 8 seconds is nothing.
Why do you have to remind them of that?
Well, I mean, poor Bills. The poor Buffalo Bills. Some other news and notes. So, okay, actually, before we get to news and notes, Mahomes versus Hurts. It will be the Chiefs and the Eagles, the 2 number 1 seeds advancing to the Super Bowl, the 2 teams that got the byes in the playoffs. Last year, when they had this playoff system, both number 1 seeds were knocked out in the divisional round. So definitely a change this season for all the chaos that happens in sports. Usually when there's a lot of chaos, and this is true for March Madness, for any sport, when there's a lot of chaos, there tends to be the favorites ending up at the end in the championship.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to think about that.
Very interesting to think about.
News and notes. Kellen Moore out as the Cowboys offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
and now he's been hired by the San Diego Chargers.
That was surprising to hear. That surprised a lot of people to hear that Kellen Moore was out. Some Cowboys fans, I believe Cowboys fans are split, but from what I've heard, majority of them wanted Kellen Moore gone. So it was very interesting to see. I personally didn't expect it to happen. News kind of came up out of the blue. And I'm sure a lot of other people felt that way as well. But you know what? He found a job quick.
He did.
LA. Chargers, my bad.
I call him San Diego. It's like
Are you going to call the Rams St. Louis?
I call the Rams St. Louis and the Raiders Oakland. I mean, I'm just an originalist.
There we go. Should we then call the Baltimore Ravens the Cleveland Browns?
Should we call the Tennessee Titans the Houston Oilers? I mean, we could go back for a while here.
Yeah, or the Indianapolis Colts, the Baltimore Colts. I mean, we could go.
I mean,
the Bears, the Arizona Bears.
No, I thought that was the. Hold on, wait.
Oh, that's right. The Chicago Cardinals. My bad.
Thank you. I was like, I thought
got that reversed.
Somewhere George Halas is just like rolling in his grave.
Yeah. I'm sorry, George.
So, be very interesting matchup. That'll be on February 12th, Sunday, February 12th. We'll have Colby back for the Super Bowl. After that, well, actually, we'll have a podcast that week, and then we're taking a little bit of a hiatus before March Madness. So, we'll have Colby back to talk Super Bowl. Very interesting matchup. Patty Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. Going to go battle in 2 weeks in the desert in Phoenix. So, very interesting matchup at State Farm Stadium. Very excited to watch this. So, thanks to Colby Vollrath for joining us all season, as well as David Miller earlier in the season. Colby, it's been a blast. We will see you in 2 weeks.
I will see you in 2 weeks.
Now on to X Games, where Tyler Corbo, who is one of our co-founders and our action sports and cycling correspondent, he and I were on site this week covering X Games for the 3-day event in Aspen. We got to see a lot of stuff. Here's a report from on site in Aspen. An incredible 3 days in Aspen at X Games will start on Friday, where women's snowboard slopestyle occurred. There's a Special Olympics for unified snowboarding and skiing, women's ski big air, ski knuckle huck, and the Monster Energy men's snowboard superpipe final. We'll start with snowboard slopestyle, where Zoe Sadowski-Sanat from New Zealand landed a combination of tricks to take home the gold, starting with a 50-50 gap to a board slide, rainbow rail, and then she finished it off after a few more tricks in between with a switchback side 900 Weddle. Oh my word, absolutely incredible on day one. That's just snowboard slope style. As the snow continued to come down, fans were coming through the mountains. It was a tough drive on 70 getting over there. But you know what? X Games never disappoints. In the Special Olympics unified snowboarding and skiing, skiers and snowboarders competed in a slalom race along with pro athletes. So that was really cool to see. Then, as the night began, there was music. There was a lot of stuff going on. Women's ski big air was streamed live on YouTube, and it was televised on ESPN. Megan Oldham made history. She became the first woman in skiing and snowboarding ever to land a triple cork in a competition. Wow. It landed her a perfect 50, and her combined score of 91 was good enough to take home gold. In the nightcap, well, Scotty James put on another show. In big air, on the big air jump and the Chipotle ski knuckle huck, Jesper Tater took home the gold, and then we moved on over to the left to the super pipe, where Scotty James claimed gold again, his 5th X Games gold medal in 7 tries in super pipe. His final run was just a victory lap because he'd already won the event with a 180 drop into a switch. a couple of other tricks, and then he finished with the switch backside 1260. Absolutely phenomenal. He actually passed right in front of us, right in front of Tyler and I, on the pipe. It was just absolutely fantastic to watch. A treat on Friday. And who would have known that Saturday was going to be even better? More records broken on Saturday. Gordon Choi became the youngest athlete to win gold. She's 14 years old. She won it in the women's super pipe. That was incredible to watch. In the big air contest, Marcus Cleveland claimed gold with 2 of his first 3 runs scoring over 47. We'll get to that in a second. And there were also 2 snowboarders landing the first triple corks in competition on the snowboard side, because if you remember, there was a triple cork landed from Megan Oldham last night, or on Friday night at least. Saturday was just an absolute show. That's the best way to describe it. It was an absolute show. The snow was falling. It was like a blizzard. It was 10, 15 degrees. But I tell you, it was cold, but it was worth it. Absolutely worth it. In the ski slope style, Colby Stevenson took home the gold. He had a backside 360 and a continuing 270, and he landed a lot of other tricks before finishing with a switch left side double 1080 safety and a left double 1620 stalefish. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, go Google it. That's just like the best way to describe it for a podcast. Google what these tricks are, and I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. Check out the X Games Instagram page as well as YouTube for additional highlights. As we mentioned, we'll get to snowboard big air. It was the last event of the night. We'd just come off the mountain watching a few other events on the super pipe and practice over on the slopestyle course for Sunday's events. Marcus Cleveland, 3rd year in a row, he scored a 49 on his first run, and then he scored a 47 in his 3rd run, and by then the floodgates were open. Nobody was going to catch him. People were starting to leave, but they were still watching the big screen because it was just absolutely incredible to watch Marcus Cleveland in action right then and there. He finished with the 96. He took home gold. Tyler and I caught up with him after, but the audio was not really that good due to the fact that it was a blizzard. That's why we're recording our recap here today on Sunday. Just phenomenal. Speaking of the things that went down today on Sunday, Marcus Cleveland has won 2 golds. He almost became the first person to win 3 golds in a single X Games, but he was clipped by Mark McMorris in the men's snowboard slopestyle earlier in the day. But before that, there was a women's ski slopestyle. Megan Oldham got her 2nd gold after winning it on Friday. She won this one in the ski slopestyle and finished her run with a double cork 1260 safety. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Now to the snowboard slopestyle. Local product Red Gerard was in it. He finished in 4th. Mark McMorris was in 1st, and then Marcus Cleveland jumped him. Cleveland becomes the first athlete since Travis Pastrana to win 3 golds. Or he was trying to become the first athlete since Travis Pastrana to win 3 golds during the same X Games. But Mark McMorris was in 2nd, and he jumped into 1st. So McMorris jumped up with back-to-back 1620s. Finished it with the backside triple cork 1620 Indy. Just, we got a really cool shot. We can't show you, but we got a really cool shot from just underneath the mountain, or at the base of the mountain, capturing what Mark McMorris did. Yeah, Mark McMorris wins the gold. Marcus Cleveland gets the silver. So crazy stuff. McMorris now has 22 medals. He is the closer, and he literally closed it out with the last run in the slopestyle event. He'll take home the gold, and he is now the most decorated winter athlete in X Games history. As for Marcus Cleveland, he might have gotten silver in that event, but 4 or 5 hours later, he got gold in the snowboard knuckle huck, which was over on the big air course. Finished his run with a butter backside 180, a double cork 1260, and the simplest way to put it, coming over the hill once you get off the jump, knuckle huck is basically you're putting your arm down, you're trying to make some skill, you're trying to pull some skills out that you wouldn't normally pull out during a normal competition because you're not really focused on air, you're just focused on technique. You're focused on the overall impression in knuckle huck. Oh, it was fantastic to watch. Haldor Helgeson came out of retirement. It'd been 13 years since he last came into X Games in 2010 when he scored a perfect 100 and got gold then. This time around, he got silver, but even 13 years later, he still showed that, he's still in his prime a little bit. I'll tell you, I'm looking at Tyler right now. I'm like, dude, we felt like children again. And he's just nodding his head over at me like, yep. In men's ski big air, the bright lights were on. It wasn't snowing. The snow finally cleared on Sunday today. Fantastic stuff. Switch 1800 and front 2160 from Mac forehand helped him win the ski big air, and in the ski super pipe, David Wise got his first gold since 2018 by landing a winning run with a lot of combinations that ended up finishing with a right double cork 1260 Weddle. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Our thanks to the X Games team for having us this entire week. This is unforgettable. We're hoping to be back next week. We're also hoping to have a couple of other interviews with athletes and personalities from X Games that we'll release over time here in the next few weeks. From X Games to college hoops, we got a lot of information to cover. In college basketball, we have a stat correction to get to. Last week we said that Gonzaga had won 76 games in a row against unranked opponents. It's actually 83 in a row before they fell to Loyola Marymount. 46 of those were at home. This week, we saw the Texas Tech Red Raiders erase a 23-point deficit after halftime, ending their 8-game Big 12 skid. Devion Harmon had 16 points after the halftime break. 80-77 winners the Red Raiders are. The Sweet 16 team from last year, not off to as hot of a start this year, but they take down number 13 Iowa State. It is the largest comeback by any team in D1 basketball this season. Well, it ties it at least, and it ties the largest comeback to beat an AP-ranked team in the last decade. And as if there were not enough records, it set a record for the largest second-half deficit overcome to win a game in the history of the Big 12. Something also to note, Iowa State had a 99.6% win probability at one point in the game when they led by 23. As we've mentioned many times on the podcast, win probability means nothing. So don't really pay attention to it. It's hypotheticals. We focus on facts here. In college basketball, one of the best announcers of our generation, at least, in previous generations too, Billy Packer died at the age of 82 on Thursday. He covered 34 Final Fours, including 1997, when he says,
Simon Says Championship.
Rest in peace, Billy Packer. Your voice was the soundtrack to a lot of March Madness games with Jim Nantz over the years. In the NBA, Damian Lillard needed just 29 shot attempts and 10 free throw attempts to score 60 points. Just two other players, Karl Malone and James Harden, reached 60 points on fewer shot attempts. Both scored a higher percentage of their points at the foul line, as they took 23 free throws and Lillard took 10. Other news to mention off of that, him scoring 60, something to also mention on Lillard's 60-point game. There's only been one other time in history where a player scored 60 points and did it with fewer than 10 free throw attempts. Rick Barry did it in 1974, 5 free throw attempts. Because of those limited opportunities, Lillard posted the highest true shooting percentage, which is a measure of combined efficiency on shot attempts and free throws, ever in a 60-point game, .898. That is just, look, we're going to dig into analytics as time goes on, but that is an astonishing, absolutely astonishing number. Something that is also astonishing, Steph Curry got ejected from an NBA game. He got ejected for the third time in his career last week against the Grizzlies. Happened in 2016 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and in 2017 also against the Grizzlies. The reason for this ejection, and actually the previous two as well, he tossed his mouthpiece. Well, maybe he'll learn his lesson and not let it happen a fourth time. And also Luka Doncic had another 50-point performance, his fifth of his career, one more than the rest of the Mavs have combined for in franchise history. And Rick Barry comes up again in our stats recap this week. Rick Barry is the only person with more 50-point performances at age 23 or younger in NBA history. Doncic has now matched Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, and Michael Jordan as players to have 5 50-point performances by the age of 23. In NASCAR, Matt Kenseth and 2 others made it to the Hall of Fame, but they weren't the only people to get inducted to a Hall of Fame. Scott Rowland will be headed to Cooperstown. The 7-time All-Star and 8-time Gold Glove winner at third base got in with just enough votes. He's the only player to get in this season. There have only been 2 players elected in the last 3 ballots, which is tied for the fewest amount of players ever elected into Cooperstown. Now, Todd Helton missed out by 2.8% in his 5th year of eligibility. So for a guy who had a career road OPS, which is on-base percentage plus slugging, of 0.855, which is pretty darn good, actually. That's the sixth best all-time on the road. The argument for Coors is a hitter's park and he shouldn't be in Cooperstown needs to come to an end. Scott Rowland into Cooperstown. Finally, in hockey, the Boston Bruins have lost back-to-back games. Actually, they've lost back-to-back-to-back games for the first time all season. They were the last team to not do that. They lost to the Lightning, the Panthers, and the Hurricanes. 3 games in the last 4 days. They'll play the Maple Leafs before headed out to the All-Star break, which actually starts this weekend. Not last weekend, as we said last week. So hopefully the Bruins can find their footing, I guess you could say. They are still the best team in hockey with 32 games to play. They lead the Maple Leafs by 11 points, the Hurricanes by 9. That's just in the Eastern Conference. They lead by over 15 over both teams at the top of the Western Conference. Speaking of standings, in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins still have 81 points, tops in the Atlantic Division, followed by the Maple Leafs and Lightning, who are on 70 and 65 points. All teams have about 30 or 35 games remaining in their season. In the Metro, the Hurricanes, Devils, and Rangers are the top 3 in that division, with the Hurricanes leading the Devils by 4 points and the Rangers by 10. The Capitals and Penguins are the final 2 wildcard spots where the playoffs to begin today. In the Western Conference, the Central Division is led by the Dallas Stars, who have 66 points. The Winnipeg Jets have 65 points, but have played a game more than Dallas. The Minnesota Wild and the Colorado Avalanche have 58 and 57 points respectively. They are in 3rd and 4th in the Central Division. In the Pacific Division, the expansion team from last season leads the expansion team from a few seasons ago. The Seattle Kraken have 63 points, and the Golden Knights have 62 points. The Kings and the Oilers are on 62 and 60 respectively. It's going to be a very, very tight Western Conference race for those 8 playoff spots. One final note before we go, we forgot to mention this earlier. Congrats to Novak Djokovic on winning his 10th Australian Open title. He won the title down under in Melbourne last weekend. He's now got the most majors of any man in the history of tennis. Rafael Nadal is close. He's one behind, but he's a little bit injured and nearing the end of his career. So is Djokovic. But nonetheless, Djokovic wins his 10th Australian Open title, and he did it with a 1-inch tear in his hamstring. That man is just built different. As we mentioned last week, we've got a few things up our sleeve. Be sure to check out our website, thesprt.wordpress.com. We've got some articles and some photos up from our time in Aspen at X Games. We've also got a few other things coming up with some major sporting events here over the coming months, so stay tuned for that. We'll also have a local podcast. We're kind of dipping our toes into the Colorado sports scene, considering a lot of people want to go coach over there. So we're going to do what we can do with that. We got a podcast coming up for that we'll talk about in a couple weeks after the Super Bowl. So stay tuned for more information on that.
For now, I'm Chandler.
So let it be written, so let it be done.
Thanks for tuning into the Sport Report today. We'll be back on our next episode with the latest in sports. Right now, we're still working on a website, but if you want to follow us on social media, we are at SR_CWS on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find our podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, you name it. We're on almost every podcast platform.
This podcast is copyrighted by the Sport Report for viewers to understand sports from a news reporting basis. Any other use of this podcast, Sport Report logos, or anything associated with this podcast without the express written consent of Channel Sports is strictly prohibited.